I suddenly remember why I never do this.
Looks good so far.
I am something bordering comfortable.
I don't think I'm going to worry about the close-up shot at this point. It's just too much work.
Tree podcast continues to be a valid premise.
It is. It's just, like, I'm too worried about it falling. Like, it's not
Or
very...
worry about me falling.
Oh.
I'm scared up here. And my hands are balled up in a fist in my gloves, so if I start falling, I'm just cooked.
Welcome to the third episode of this insane idea I had. My guest today is one of my best friends, David. If you just want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what makes you insane enough to come up here with me.
Well, Kevin, that's a good question. I'd have to say I'm a bit of a pushover.
A little bit of a people pleaser?
A little bit.
Yeah, that's good.
But I'm having fun. It's a nice day for it.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't get too windy.
Yeah. So, what did you have in mind for us today?
Well, mostly I've been really obsessed with this guy, Simon Sinek. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he's a big TED talker, and he's written a lot of books on basically the whys of life, like why people do good things, and like the motivations, like intrinsic motivation, that kind of thing. And recently he's been really focused on friendship, and I've been kind of enjoying that. So basically I kind of want to talk about some of the questions and concepts around both like our personal friendship and like other relationships or friendships we have, and then like our perspectives on friendship in like the culture at large. But for starters, I guess we can just start with why are we friends, and like what do we enjoy about each other's company? Or how long have we been friends, and why are we still friends, I guess?
Yeah, and I mean that sort of question like begs other questions about like what does friends mean? When does someone go from an acquaintance to a friend, right? I know you've got that one written down. But I mean, I always thought how we became friends was pretty interesting, and it's one of the things that makes me confident in the
longevity,
like
or
yeah, sure, the longevity, like the strength of our friendship kind of is illustrated by how we met. Like we were kind of just in each other's environment.
Yeah, we were acquaintances for a little bit in early high school, yeah.
Almost never talking, but then as soon as, like, once we started having extended contact, something kind of clicked. And especially once uni starts and the bulk of the friend group moves away or goes on to other things, as soon as we're not in that shared environment, you find out who you put in the effort to keep in your life.
Yeah.
It's one of those things about becoming an adult.
The demographic transition, who are the real ones, the phases of life.
Yeah. But through it all, you've always been really easy to talk to for me. And I don't have that with very many people. So that's why I think we're friends.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting because the last episode with Daphne, like I talked a little bit about the, what is it, like proximity, like shared proximity, how important that is, as opposed to like the shared values and interests. Mm-hmm. And basically my kind of thesis or way of thinking about it now is that people have been more focused on the latter, the shared values and interests, which is important, but they've kind of almost forgotten about like the shared proximity and like how that is like also like an essential part of friendship. Although of course like neither of those alone is necessarily enough for like the longer best examples of friendship we have. But yeah, I would say like our early friendship was basically just proximity, right? Like it was like we just played League and like we hung out in the same group and we had the same classes or whatever. But we never really hung out one-on-one like after school or whatever, like made specific plans with like just us in mind. But then as time moved on, it was a slow burn for sure. And then as soon as like the group events start happening, then you find out which people you tend to gravitate towards. Like like from the big group, and then you have your smaller groups, and then as you said, like once people move away, then you start to, yeah, and as we get more freedom too, like with their driver's licenses, and like I moved out, so like you get more freedom, and then you get to start picking and choosing which ones you choose to invest in. And then I think that's when we discovered like a lot more of our probably shared humor and like values and like conversational styles, that like it's not about the activity or the shared proximity necessarily. Like we can still do activities, but like I'm pretty comfortable like just being with you for like hours at a time, and we don't need a buffer activity to like keep us occupied or like distract us, because we can typically generate new conversations as long as you're not bored or tired.
Yeah, the buffer activity criteria is probably pretty strong. Like
between the acquaintance and friendship, you think that might be the level?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Could be an indicator anyway.
It's a decent metric. When do you stop needing the buffer activity, and then that's when you become a friendship? Daphne was making the difference. She was drawing the line between friends and friendship, and friends is basically her word for like acquaintances or like people you would call your friends, and then friendships are the ones that you invest in, like actively.
Yeah.
Like friends is more passive, and friendship is active.
Yeah, I was thinking about definitions on our way up here, and
yeah.
I think when it comes to like what a friend is, I'm almost a solipsist when it comes to that, because it doesn't
tell our American viewers what that word means.
It means that your friends only exist in your mind. It's like a personal thing. Like whoever my friends are is who I decide they are. It doesn't really matter what the material conditions are or what they think of you. If someone is a friend to you, then they're your friend, and you can kind of make your own criteria for it. I think most people know it when they see it.
Yeah. Well, some people don't. Some people do AI or imaginary friends, and they're also solipsists in that sense.
It's because friendships aren't by necessity symmetrical, right?
Yeah.
That's why I have that position where, like, everybody, any relationship, there is going to be more investment on one side, just out of coincidence, if nothing else.
Yeah. So on that note, then we can talk a little bit about the models of friendship we have, like specifically like the positive role models, because I guess the other reason I was coming at this is with the Simon Sinek stuff is like there's not. I feel like the society has been afflicted a little bit by oneitis, or like we've put too much emphasis on like the relationship, like the lover, and then like maybe work or whatever. But like mostly the lover. It's like the lover has to be like everything. Like they gotta have like the same interests. You gotta like their family and like whatever, and you gotta get everything you need from them, or you gotta get it from like the best friend. Like that kind of trope is more and more common, and I think what we see in shows and media obviously depends, but I think basically then that becomes an illness, because you end up putting too much pressure or a burden on certain areas in society when say like our friendships or our third places have kind of declined on us. So like, but we're still seeking for like meaning and connection and value and socialization. So it's like we've kind of forgotten about like the friendships, or like how to make them and how to develop that muscle. And I feel like that's kind of a symptom of why so many people feel like unsatisfied with their relationships, or like, for example, like hookup culture a little bit. And then also even some of the political illness at large, like why people choose to attach themselves to like ideological groups, because they don't have friends, right? And if you don't have friends, then you might as well become communist, because at least they'll be your friends.
Right.
Your thoughts on that?
I think I'm not sure if the friendship thing is that key to the isolation epidemic. I think it's probably a byproduct, but it makes sense to me. You know, like I know we're going to talk about third places and having stronger ties to community in general. It breeds moderates. You know, like people are less likely to attach themselves to some strange ideological group if they know their neighbor's name.
Yeah.
And can make small talk with them. The way you were phrasing it almost makes it seem like you think this oneitis, this idea of putting your whole social life on the back of a single person, kind of feeds into the isolation.
Yes, I would say that, yeah. I thought you were going a different way, sorry.
So then is the goal to just broaden people's social circles?
Yeah, basically. Like the goal is to distribute the load. It's like to diversify your stocks.
Yeah.
Like don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's like, it's just you shouldn't have one best friend. You should have like 5 best friends or whatever, like that you can get a different set of opinions from. And it's just more practical because you can't always rely on like one friend. Sometimes they're busy or they got other stuff going on, or maybe they don't have the best experience to give you for the kind of circumstance you're in at that moment. So it's like the more different kinds of perspectives you can have, like it's funny, like I'm actually sounding a little bit like the diversity liberal cuck, but like I really do believe in that the more different kinds of friendships you can have, like it often leads to just really good outcomes, I think.
Right.
It makes you more resilient to loss too, because then you're not so focused
Not all your eggs in one
on losing
basket.
the girlfriend or like the best friend, or if you move, then you're fine. Like the person. Go ahead. I'm gonna rant too much, but
No, support systems are important, but I think they're pretty hard to maintain these days. Like, what do you say to the blue collar worker who's working 80 hours a week at the factory, and he doesn't have any close friends because where does he go to socialize?
yeah, it's difficult, and that's why I would never place too much emphasis on the individual responsibility too, and that's why we're going to talk about the third places, because I think it's also like a big portion of like both the government's fault and also like big tech exploiting us basically, so that like after we worked 80 hours or whatever, and they're like we're working 80 hours because our wages haven't kept up with inflation or whatever, like workers' rights are constantly trampled upon, but like it's a failure of regulation that they haven't kept up the kinds of infrastructure in society needed to keep up those friendships, right? So I understand the sympathy and empathy for people that don't have friends, because it's not even necessarily like their fault, that it's not like they're bad people that they don't have friends, or like they're making the decision. Like often they're just like so overloaded and they don't have the fit for third places, or they don't have the money to go to the third places, because some of the third places are just like like profit driven, right? There's not a lot of non-profits that we go to anymore. Like we gotta pay to go to the YMCA, right?
Yeah, like we have community centers. Like I think of places like the John Rhodes and the McMeekin, where we have ice rinks and pools and all this stuff, but these don't seem like they're producing social interaction to me.
No, they don't, and that's part of the problem, because basically they used to.
Yeah.
Or people used to know their neighbors' names, or kind of care a lot more about like their sports leagues or whatever, but like even our sports leagues have gotten kind of more like individualized, or like you don't hang out with your teammates as much, or I don't want to seem like I'm discounting all the other factors that go into the decline of friendship and our political isolation and our problems now. Like it's multifaceted. I just happen to think that friendship is not getting the coverage that it needs. Like no one talks about it as a concept.
Well, sure, there's plenty of topics that are worthy of coverage that aren't getting it.
For sure. I think friendship is the most worthy. because it's just like all encompassing, like it's a little bit cheesy or whatever. The problem is that people think it's getting coverage, but like it's not. Like it's just getting surface level coverage. Who's your favorite?
People think it's getting coverage? I think if you walk down the street and ask someone if they think friendship is getting enough coverage, they would look at you and say, "What?
What
the fuck are you talking?"
Do you think friendship is getting enough? Yeah. Wait, you don't get what I mean?
I think these kind of issues, like actual social issues, aren't in the public consciousness maybe at all. Like the issue of isolation, I don't think many people are thinking about that at all. I think people are just angry.
I think isolation is pretty at the forefront of the public consciousness, actually.
Well, maybe I'm just too isolated.
Well, like I don't think we're extrapolating just from our own experiences. Like I think how do you just social like it's just you have to be so isolated to not like if you're in touch with people, then you know people are isolated, and if you're isolated, then you know you're isolated. So it's like you sort of yeah. What I mean by the friendship is that people people don't know the skills it takes to become a good friend, or people don't think about that as much. I don't think, or maybe girls do it well. Like they kind of have this more conversation, but I think guys have always had it worse for various reasons.
Yeah, I guess you could look at it from the male loneliness perspective, where like the isolation, I mean, it's pretty well documented, it affects the guys worse, right?
Yeah. Like it was literally like $1 billion red pill industry over like COVID, and like it's still kind of going now, the remnants of it. But like there's a reason that so many of our biggest figures, like I don't know, Andrew or Jordan Peterson or like Elon Musk, like people just attach themselves to these figures. But like I would argue that these guys are probably like 3 of like the loneliest men on earth, just because like they don't. Like, I know they have, like, families and stuff. I don't think Tate has a family, but they're just so mad at the time.
Like
yeah, like he does, but he doesn't spend time with any of them, right? And I think Jordan is a little bit better about spending time with his kids. He's a bit of a different case, but I mostly just mean, I don't think that those guys are particularly good role models for the positive vision of, like, masculinity I want to see in the world.
No, of course not.
And I guess I want to talk about what I see as more potentially positive role models that I want to see more coverage on.
Well, before you talk about that, you should do a good job of defining what you think positive masculinity looks like. Because that's the reason that Andrew Tate and Elon Musk and all these people get popular, is because they appeal to a kind of masculinity that people already understand.
Right. My favorite definition for it is masculinity is multiplying the resources that you were given and redistributing them to the community or village that raised you.
That's a weirdo definition.
That is a little bit weird, but because I had another guest tell me that like it kind of goes into like the economic, like men are like GDP machines or whatever, like that's what they're built for. But I kind of like it just because it's like, and it can apply to both genders too, but I like it just because it places responsibility and like power in the hands of a man, but it also means that like it's not enough to just be successful and like wealthy and powerful. It's about like kind of treading that route, and you don't have to be powerful. All you have to do is like make more of your resources, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's about teaching yourself and teaching others to fish, or like coaching others like your skills, like developing your skills and then kind of like paying it forward. But neither of those parts are enough. Like if you don't pay it forward, then all of those developing skills, like what was it for?
Let me think about this thermodynamic definition of masculinity.
You can think about it or present your own.
I like the idea of masculinity representing a provider, but I feel like it's so easily warped by the idea of capital, you know? Like that's how you get these people like following Andrew Tate thinking they have to be rich, but that's not really resources. I think framing is important here, because it shouldn't be misconstrued as, because you shouldn't look at Andrew Tate and see a provider, because he's not. He doesn't do anything. I think I would frame it more as, and you talked about this, but in terms of providing for the community, like a more localized masculinity, like a responsibility to the people around you. And I think that is a lot healthier than this idea of getting rich and successful and powerful for its own sake. But it's a tough line to walk.
Yeah.
I think gender in general is in a very weird place right now.
Why do you think do you think there's a value to the terms like masculinity and like femininity?
I think
because there are some people that say that like that they're not really useful anymore, and maybe there should just be like a path for, like you should just have like a value structure for both. I would counter that, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
At the end of the day, there are differences between the sexes, and some of those differences manifest in gender.
Yeah.
So there's probably something to it. I'm not really sure what that is. And there's always gray area and exceptions that break any rules you could make about what gender roles should be. So I don't think that people should take them all that seriously. But having cogent ideas of masculinity and femininity that aren't awful is probably helpful. And I think that most people will probably subscribe to these ideas for the foreseeable future. So I think regardless of somebody's stance on gender, it would be good for us to talk about what these words mean.
Yeah, for sure.
Because right now, masculinity is kind of being weaponized against men's own interests.
Yeah.
That's my perspective when I look at people like Elon and Tate.
It feels like they're taking it to like the logical conclusion, which is driving us off a cliff.
Right. I don't know. Like, I think this is a active discussion that will continue, like what masculinity means, but the concept of responsibility is one that I think is pretty safe. But again, like, applies to both genders. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. It's very hard to find positive virtues that you can associate with one gender identity that shouldn't be associated with the other. And
I think the most useful delineation we have for the terms is it's just what path is basically easiest to lay out for the average of each gender, right?
Right.
And like there will be overlap between, but it's just like it's like you got to teach the middle, right? Like, or maybe you don't have to. That's
if I was.
But it's like if you're going to lay out a path for society, you try to lay out the path that works for the most people in that path, and that I think is what the conversation should be centered around, is like what paths should we lay out to teach like our boys and girls and young men and young women, like what kinds of ideals should they follow in order to become the ideal unit in society, the ideal male or the ideal female or whatever. And both definitions are involving, so it'll be an interesting conversation for.
Well, let me devil's advocate you on this, because I'm not really sure how I feel about this issue, to be honest. Yep. But the gender theorists would say, well, we don't really have gender roles for any reason other than material. We're animals, and men are stronger because they don't have to bear children, and women are really good at bearing children because they have to bear children. And that's the only reason we ever had gender roles. Mm-hmm. Is there some like emergent property that makes gender relevant to a modern person who lives in society and doesn't have to worry about survival on a day-to-day basis? Because that's like civil rights has been an issue throughout history because of things like that. Like women have rights as of like, when did they get the right to vote in the US? Like in the 20s or something?
Around then.
And that was brought about by gender roles. So we've been working constantly to reduce the influence of gender roles in society. And the logical endpoint to that is a sort of freedom of identity where your gender doesn't have to inform anything about what kind of person you are if you don't want it to. And I think that's where we kind of see this pushback from men, and where you see like figures like Tate and Elon come out and say, well, I'll present this alternative of traditional masculinity.
Well, you also see a pushback from the feminist side too, like the pushback, because I would say that like they're diminishing returns to pushing back on gender roles, because you can only push back so far before people start backlashing, because like, oh, you're actually like some people do find a lot of value or identity in the gender roles.
Right, people are,
and like, there's only so much you can kind of take away from it before you maybe start taking away like actual value that's
Yeah, it's a thinker. I guess the question is, are these people lashing out because of something that really exists, or is it still just that cultural enforcement of this is what the roles have been and this is what they should continue to be? And I mean, I guess like child rearing still plays a role. Like women still have to get pregnant and be pregnant and stay home with the baby. And that will kind of enforce these roles basically until we don't need to have pregnancy anymore in the far future. Which will probably never happen.
Until we
right?
perfect the in vitro stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, there could be something there, but I don't know, you need to have some kind of scientist on who studies this stuff.
Yeah. I want to talk to a queer theorist at some point. That's the goal, to talk to experts that can actually know a lot more about this stuff than us delusional guys in the tree. I got a little bit away from friendship for a second there. That's what I'm supposed to talk about. Who are your favorite friends in the media?
In media?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I like Finn and Jake from Adventure Time. They come to mind.
Yeah?
I think they're pretty good.
What about their friendship is so inspiring to you?
Well, maybe that's a bad example, because they're closer to like brothers, you know?
Brothers can be friends.
But I like that they disagree. Like, they will fight and get mad at each other and make up, like, pretty regularly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I remember enough of that show to bring up specific examples, but I always think of them as like the archetypal friends. But they live together, so maybe I should find an example where there's a little more distance between them. I haven't been watching much TV.
I think my favorite example is, well, I used Iroh for my last example for like positive masculinity, but now I'm gonna use Aang and Zuko, I guess, just because I've just been rewatching it. But I kind of agree with the fighting thing, just because I like the idea that let's go into our vices question. I like the idea that friends should take more responsibility for kind of each other, because it's like you are your 5 closest friends, and like yes, you can like pick and choose and like distance yourself from like some friends, but I actually kind of think friends should be fighting more or like arguing more. I think friends typically tend to be scared of those kinds of like boundaries for good reason, because most of the time when you're with your friends, you want to be having positive interactions, so there's good reason to be scared. But I guess I think people are overly scared of treading that fine line between friendship and then, I don't know, responsibility or whatever, or like kind of telling a friend like advice unprompted or something, like if your friend has like a drinking problem or like an addiction problem or something, right? Like when does it become your problem? When should you say something, or you just never say anything unless they tell you to say something? That's an interesting problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's something our group has always been really good with.
In what sense?
Well, I mean,
in fighting, like we're not too scared to fight, or
that, and the fact that like when we think one of us has a problem, we bring it up with them pretty consistently. That's one way that we're spoiled, right? Like I don't think most people have that kind of system in their lives outside of their family.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't say Aang and Sokka, because I think they are a pretty interesting example. Like, they're not that close in the show. Like, they don't have all that many scenes together.
Yeah.
But they do have this mutual respect. Like, they're kind of a good example of like friends that have a little bit of distance. Like, they aren't all encompassing in each other's lives. Avatar actually has a lot of good examples. Like, what about Roku and Sozin. Or is it
And,
Sozin?
like, they ended up fighting?
Yeah, like that was a good one. The Fire Lord and the Avatar before Aang. That was a really good episode on friendship, where you can actually see them drift apart over the course of the episode as, you know, the Avatar is responsible for maintaining peace in the land.
Right.
And the other one becomes more and more warlike and imperialistic. And it basically shows their friendship breaking down until at the end one is murdered by the other. But,
Yeah.
but they basically spend the whole time arguing. And they're friends up until the end. I'm not sure what that says about friendships in general, but
Yeah, friendships that distance themselves end up in murder.
but it's more about the fact that they fought and stayed friends.
Yeah.
And they both basically fought for as long as they knew each other. And Avatar's got a lot of realistic depictions of friendship like that, especially male friendship.
That's the big part that I think that show does well, especially is the realistic part. Like when we talk about positive models of friendship, it doesn't have to mean good friendships. Like bad friendships are also good models of friendships because we just have a lot of bad friendships too. Like it's like you don't need perfect representation. You need realistic representation. What are your fears and hopes for your current and future friendships?
Well, I'm always afraid of people being isolated by their jobs.
Yeah.
That's my main thing that worries me about friendships is people have to move all the time. And it doesn't matter how good your friendship is, there's strain when somebody has to move to Southern Ontario.
Yeah.
Or when somebody goes to school across the country somewhere, things like that. You know, you drift away from people that you don't necessarily want to.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I get counterbalanced pretty well by the hope for just new friends, people to fill in the space, because that's what'll happen. You have to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever had too much difficulty finding friends, but I wonder how much of that is me being able to suit anybody that I meet, and how much of that is I can genuinely make connections with people.
Like you might just be a chameleon, or you might just be lucky.
Might just be lucky. I'm definitely lucky. I've lots of friends in my life right now. Lots of close friends. But, yeah, I don't know. I remember last school year, like the one before this past one, was probably the loneliest period in my life.
Yep.
Where just everyone had kind of moved away. We weren't hanging out with the guys all that much. But more people are in town now, and we started all hanging out as a group with Enid and Ethan and them. And I'm really glad that happened, because I was spending a lot of time in my room.
Yeah.
What about you?
What?
Has anybody asked you that question back yet? What are your fears and hopes for your friendships?
No. Anyone's free to, but what did I say? I guess I basically agreed with the last person that said that I am a little bit scared of the both the job. I'm more scared of the transition when we basically start our own families or like have our own places and stuff.
Yeah.
So like a lot of the similar stuff, and then I guess I am scared of whether or not I kind of have taken a lot of my friendship, like building skills or whatever, for granted, because a lot of my friends are basically from high school, and I did try a decent amount in university, but I, for various different reasons, like I haven't had as much success building that kind of friend group. So it's like as I enter like the next stage of life, like what kinds of friends am I going to be able to like build and maintain, and that worries me a little bit. And then hopes. I said this to Ina one day. My biggest hope is I just want one of my 20 closest friends to own a boat. And it's not going to be me, but I want someone else to own the boat and do the upkeep and do the maintenance or whatever.
What kind of boat?
It doesn't matter. Like any boat that can hold like a couple of friends on it. Like not like a yacht or whatever, but I don't know, something mid-sized. Something ritzy, I guess. I don't know about the boat market. But it's more so a boat as a symbol of like things that you want to do with friends, because no one goes boating alone, right?
Right.
Like you got to go with friends for it to be fun. So like I want to kind of build my life in mind with build my life with that in mind, that I want to be able to kind of do like a week long or like a 2 week long trip or something, like every year with like a couple of like my closest friends on that boat, basically.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
And yeah, that's the kind of goal I'm structured around now.
Well, if you set your sights a little lower, you know, one of us could probably own a canoe.
Yeah, that too. It doesn't have to be like, because the richness isn't about the boat. Like I said, it's a symbol, like just like
Portage.
Airbnb, like portage. Like it's just about the time.
Max would do that with you.
Yeah.
I know he's done it with his brother before.
I kind of hate the portaging, to be honest. It's
You
a
don't
lot
want
of
to carry
work.
the boat through the bush.
No, I mean like, I enjoy hiking enough as is. I don't need more stimulus or like more carry. Like I like the day-long hikes and then camping or whatever. I don't need the extra baggage of carrying a canoe everywhere. But if that's what it took to be friends with Max, then I would do it.
I would try it.
Yeah.
You'd probably get used to carrying the boat. They're not that heavy if you have like a couple people.
Yeah, that's true. Next question I had in mind was, tell me a little bit about, well, we can do this either way. I think it's better if we just say it ourselves, I guess. Like your strengths and weaknesses as a friend. And not necessarily like your personality, although that can be part of it.
No, I think I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I've definitely got weaknesses as a friend. I'm like pretty inconsiderate in general. Like, I don't know almost anyone's birthday. I know my mom's, and that's kind of been my rock. Like, I get that one right every year, and that makes me feel better about missing like 90% of the birthdays. Like, it was Max's birthday on like the 9th or something.
Yeah.
I always miss that one.
Yeah, I missed it too. I'm sure.
There's like a 30% chance that I could tell you your birthday right now.
You want to try?
I think
get the
it's in
month,
October.
Oh, you didn't even get the month. Do you know her birthday?
Yeah, I know her
The cameraman?
birthday.
What's her birthday?
Fuck. This is 50-50. It's the 3rd. August.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Okay, good job.
That was 50. It could have been the 4th, man. It really could have been. I got Daphne's wrong the other day. But that one's like almost fair because Laura's is like the day after.
Right.
I'm terrible with it, but that's just like an example, you know. I can't like hold this information. I'm bad at asking people reciprocal questions and asking them like how their day is and things like that. But I think I'm a very loyal friend. Like, I'm really good at coming through. Like, the inconsiderateness doesn't come from like a genuine apathy. It's more that
It's more a skill issue.
yeah, it's more a skill issue. It's more that like I'm just not that thoughtful. I'm just not that interested in arbitrary things like birthdays and asking people questions about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But the people that I like and that I want in my life, I'm very good at like caring. Like, I'm there if needed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like, I would say, in the small, petty ways, I'm not a very good friend. But when it counts, I'm good at showing up.
That's a good way of putting it. You're a bad low stakes friend, but like it's
acquaintances hate me.
Yeah. It's a quality over quantity type of thing. But yeah, I tend to agree with that. My difficulties with you is mostly with that small talk. Sometimes the few times I do want to make small talk, but that's also part of why we're such good friends, is we can usually kind of skip like the arbitrary stuff or whatever.
Right, like small talk for us is...
Yeah, small talk for us is whether or not... I can't say that on camera. I'd have to edit that part out. Yeah, it's like the reciprocal thing for me, probably. Or that like bothers me with you sometimes, is sometimes it's just it's like silent in the car for like too long, or like I'm kind
silence
of like
isn't
expecting you to
comfortable
like
for
say
you,
something.
I see.
Yeah, like you can have the memes there, but maybe I am a little bit bothered with silence. I think one part of it is we're just mortal beings. We have such like limited time in this world that like I feel like the time that we are like spending together, like maybe I do actually like kind of want to like fill the air, or like I want to be like productive, and I get the sense that like silence and just being in each other's presence is also in a way productive, but sometimes I feel like where it's not being productive because it's just like lack of energy, or like lack of like you said, like apathy. And I can understand that, but sometimes I can like take it like personally or whatever.
Yeah, well, my problem with you is you never shut up.
Yeah, I'm bad at droning on sometimes. Yeah, I can ask the question for you, and I can give you like I can say like mine.
Yeah.
Because you said yours, but I could say mine.
Do yours, and then I'll tell you what I don't like about you.
Yeah, no, that's good. So I told Daphne I'm bad at interrupting. Like
You are bad with that.
I just go. I get like too excited, or sometimes like I do know and I just don't care, and I just interrupt people.
No, I get that. Sometimes what you have to say is just more important than what the other person is saying.
Yeah, but sometimes I am just inconsiderate, and that's something I want to improve on. I'm gonna think for a second. This might not be a particularly great or insightful one, but I guess we don't have to be insightful. I'm not particularly good at masking or like changing forms, and that's something necessary for like a lot of other people. But it's partly the stubbornness, or it goes a little bit with the interrupting thing. But I think it's just I am not good at and not willing to change forms for like new people and even old people too.
Yeah.
Like I'm very kind of
sense.
set in my ways, which is an advantage and a disadvantage. And
well, it's a disadvantage when you're such a little weirdo.
Yeah.
You have trouble like masking your like sometimes it's your views, sometimes it's your attitude, and yeah, I mean that's one of my favorite things about you. I find it endlessly entertaining.
Yeah.
And it also like cuts out a lot of the stuff that bores me about some people, is that they're not really willing to say what they think. But you've always been pretty good about that around the people you're close with, at least. And around people you're not close with, you just don't say anything and you go nonverbal. But I actually like that about you. That's oh my god. My butt was more frozen than I thought.
It's like I like, because I don't mask, like a lot of the times I can actually kind of just ruin a social situation. I think just by being mopey. And that is skill. A little bit what I did with my ex, for example, is that like I didn't mask well enough sometimes, and maybe I shouldn't, but
Well, you
for
definitely
certain relationships,
shouldn't.
like there is a healthy amount of like
Yeah, concessions to make. For the other
concessions to make
person.
for a person, and I was not good at making those concessions.
And I could see that being a strain in certain situations. Like, I don't know, if we disagreed heavily about something, the fact that we wouldn't be able to resist arguing about it could theoretically be a problem.
Yeah, like it, and it's fine with just us, but like obviously when there are other people involved, or like when you're in a relationship, and like say if there are children involved, like for example, like it's probably something that I'll need to work on if I want to be like a good father, is like, because now it suits me to kind of be like adamant and like stubborn or whatever, because whatever, like I'm young, like I can afford it now. I don't have a lot of other like responsibilities, and it is like part of who I am, but like I need to learn how to both control and like how to adapt to like the needs of others if I want to be a provider, as we've said. So that's something I'm looking to get better at.
Yeah, and it's good to be conscious of these things so that you can work on them, right? Like, I'm always trying to memorize more birthdays. And it comes with time. Like, I know probably way more than I used to. But
Strength, I'll just go quickly. Like that wasn't quick. Yeah. It's something I've been working on over the years, but I think I have become like less shy.
I think so too.
I know I said like maybe I hadn't had as much
You were very
success
shy in high school.
building like friendships in university, but like when I actually think about it, like I actually definitely went out of my way in university to like make friends, and like like even with people like in other disciplines or like majors, like it wasn't even just in class. So, like I actually did end up sitting with a lot of different people in the library, and I wasn't that scared of like, if I knew one person at the table, then I would go sit at that table and I would meet like the three other people, and that's not really a tactic I had in high school. Like I did not sit at the table if I didn't know everyone at that table. So
Yeah.
so that's something I'm proud of, that I've become like less shy, but it's still something I'm working on.
Yeah, I think you've got more progress than I do in that department. Like, I don't know if I really made all that many friends in university. Like, a few people from lab, a few classmates here and there that I ended up getting to know, but I don't have any friends from university that are better than the friends I already had. Which, maybe that's unusual.
It was a little unusual,
But it's also like half the shit is online, and first year was at a different school.
yeah.
Things like that also contribute. I'm very shy, which is kind of odd because I'm not that introverted, but around new people, I usually need to like get my bearings before I know how to act around those people. Like, I need to know how to mask.
Yeah.
I think you're pretty dead on about the stuff you talked about. I'm trying to think of like what my difficulties are with you, and like I don't really know. Like you kind of work for me. Like I think the common things that people would say,
Like the things I might
like
need to work on with other people,
the
they would
stuff
actually
you
harm our
talked about
friendship.
made sense, and I wouldn't be surprised if somebody else mentioned like how you can kind of go dark randomly. Like you like your alone time, and you'll just disappear off the map if you feel like hiding out in your cave for like a week or two and just not open your phone and text anyone back or anything. And that really bothers some people, but it doesn't really bother me because I do the same thing. It's so much fun to see how long I can go without having to talk to another person. Sometimes I just get in that mood, especially when I don't have many responsibilities, like around the holiday season. I don't have to really leave the house all that much.
It's weird for me because I think sometimes it's definitely like an unhealthy coping mechanism, but
I don't necessarily agree with that.
I also
think,
like having a sabbatical every once in a while to rediscover myself. Or have a mourning period after a breakup or whatever.
I think it's just a different personality trait. Not everybody needs to be the same in terms of engagement with others.
Yeah, that's true. On that note, then I want to ask you about what you're optimistic about in your personal life.
In my personal life?
Yeah.
Let me think. I'm optimistic about my family. I think everything's going nice for my family right now. Like, I've got a niece on the way.
That's cool.
Both my siblings are in long-term relationships and they have established jobs and their lives are going well. So if that's any indication, then it makes me feel better about my future.
It's pretty good for the gene pool.
Yeah. I mean, to say nothing of third child effects, which are notoriously poor. But I'm optimistic about that. My mom is putting herself out there. She's getting on a cruise with
That's
my
cool.
cousin. It's going to be the first time she's traveled in like 5 years or something. She can't really drive on highways, so it's tough for her. But I think she's going to have to get on a plane and everything. Maybe not. I forget where the cruise is starting from. But it almost feels like a cop-out. Like, in terms of optimism for myself, I've got a very wait-and-see attitude. I mean, I'm optimistic about most of my friendships. Like, I feel very secure in that I will have a support system around me for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm. If you are your 5 closest friends, then it seems like things are on the way up. There's a lot to be optimistic about as far as progression goes.
Yeah, if I am my 5 closest friends, then I mean, I'm hanging out with a lot of smart and successful people.
Well, we'll see how it's successful. We have to wait for Ethan to do his AI startup, and then, and then we have to.
We'll see.
Then we can bank off his Steam success.
We're all gonna make it.
Yeah, we're all gonna make it. Yeah, that's good. And outside your personal life, then, something about maybe the state of the world, or
well, I'm optimistic, like
community.
In the very long term. I think right now we're kind of having a moment, and people need to get this whole populism thing out of their system. They need to do it and realize why it's bad, and try not to do another dark age before we get back to the small L liberalism that we've been up to. But I don't know. It's kind of tough to look outside my personal life and look at the world and think like, oh yeah, things are going the way they're supposed to.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. Things are going to get a lot worse before they get better, but I do think things will get better in the long term.
Yeah.
What's your favorite institution?
I don't like any of them.
Really?
I like universities.
You want to burn them down? You're an arsonist?
I don't think we need to burn them down.
Maybe reform.
But if you ask the liberal theorist, they would say that the current neoliberal setup with institutions that don't have any power but are supposed to be telling us what to do, it just obviously doesn't work, and we're seeing that now. And the options, according to the classical liberals, are doing away with the whole thing or giving institutions more power. Because the way it was, and the way it still largely is that these institutions like the UN and the World Health Organization, without any actual material power, they only really have any sway when times are good. And now that the economy is doing what it's doing, and times aren't so good anymore, and especially here in Canada with how fucked our housing market is, and food's going to keep getting more expensive.
Right.
It's a lot harder for people to be optimistic about these institutions. Like, oh yeah, let's all work together and have global harmony with all these different countries. I don't think people really care right now. And that's why you get this sort of wave of nationalism that we've seen. And the thing is, I don't see the economic situation getting much better very soon. So that's kind of what makes me think things are going to get worse first, because these institutions just aren't going to get support as long as people don't have all the disposable income to throw around.
Well, as far as one to support, then you said universities.
Yeah,
It's a good
universities
area to
are
go.
important.
What do you think? Well, you watched my university video,
Yeah,
so
I liked a lot of your points in that one.
what do you think was your main takeaway, or maybe
Well, the idea of just kind of reasserting the intellectual honesty of what universities should do, because I think a lot of the cultural state on this is that they're dogmatic to a certain extent that people don't like. They don't like all of the hyper-progressive sort of perceived brainwashing that happens at universities. But I mean, they're only dogmatic because that's, and I don't even necessarily think that they are, because I've never been in a class where any politics have been necessarily forced on anyone. But the state of theory on a lot of these things kind of pushes people that way. Like, in theory, like it's very easy to be idealistic at university.
right?
You know, like, you're a student, it makes sense that it would produce hyper-progressives. And there also seems to be kind of a bubble. Like, universities are kind of over-attended right now, I think.
Yeah.
But they're also kind of the bed of where new ideas should be generated and
Right.
are generated in society. And I don't think we'd be better off without them, even in their current state. But I do agree that there are reforms to be had. I think everybody should go and read The Road
It's a good book.
by Cormac McCarthy. It's my favorite book.
It's a good book recommendation.
Best thing they ever made me read for school.
All right. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time before we freeze our feet off.
I wonder if I can get out of this tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Go ahead.
Getting out?
Yes.
Yeah, you can leave it on.
Oh my god, I'm like shivering bad enough that could actually slip. Ugh. Did this one hold my weight? This one held my weight, right?
Yep. Just make sure you're grabbing on the other ones too.
Treetop Treaties Fail compilation. Kevin, I don't know how the fuck I'm supposed to get back to this cliff.